of a mother who had the courage to have the offspring of her children killed, or another that simply fed on his own son, and yet another one who saw his son as something so disposable that he tried to exchange for another woman's son. These are absurd things, aren't they? But it was that kind of thing that the worst mothers in the Bible were able to do. Yes, the Bible records the stories of some women who were bad examples of mothers. Undoubtedly, the worst mothers of the Bible failed a lot with their children. And in many cases, the failure of these women in the task of being a mother also influenced the way their children became bad people. We can find bad examples of mothers in the Bible in both the Old and New Testament, from the lighter cases to the most claims. Even godly people like Rebecca gave bad examples as mothers. We know that Rebecca showed favoritism for one of her children, and this has divided her home for a long time, to the point of a son wishes to kill the other. Consequently, Rebecca had to deal with the suffering of seeing her favorite son, Jacob, leaving away from her home so as not to be killed by her other son, Esau, and she never found him in life. But of course, Rebecca is far from being one of the worst mothers in the Bible. Another bad example of a mother registered in the Bible, this much more serious than Rebecca's, is that of Herodias. This woman, who descended from King Herod, left her husband to have a relationship with his own brother-in-law, Herod Antipas. And the Bible says that when this immoral relationship was denounced by the prophet John the Baptist, Herodias tried to destroy him at any cost. And the way she found to satisfy her feelings of revenge, was manipulating her own daughter. She managed her daughter to dance sensually to Antipas' heroes, and got him the promise that the head of the prophet John the Baptist would be given to her on a plate that same night. And before a terrible story like that, maybe at this moment you are wondering if it can get even worse. And the truth is that yes. So let's get to know the 3 worst mothers in the Bible now. The first bad example of mother on our list of the 3 worst mothers in the Bible is the story of an anonymous woman who lived during the beginning of King Solomon's reign, around 970 BC, according to the narrative of the first book of Kings, chapter 3, between verses 16 to 28. 2 women harlots lived together, and the 2 gave birth at the same time with a difference of just 3 days. But one night, one of those women eventually killed her own son as he lay down on him. Yes, it was accidental. Instead of mourning for his lost son, that woman sneaking up at night and picked up her homemate's son as if she were yours, and laid her son's body killed on the other woman. That is, she simply exchanged her son as if it were a mere worthless object that had broken. In the morning, when the other mother got up to breastfeed her son, she saw that the boy was dead. However, obviously, she also realized that this was not her son, but the son of the woman he shared the house, and that mother's dispute to try to recover her true son came to King Solomon. In front of the king, the 2 women said they were mothers of the boy. So, very wisely, Solomon proposed to share the boy alive in half with a sword for each woman to stay with a half of him. And in the face of this proposal that seemed to be absurd, the true mother soon renounced her son, because she would rather see him alive with her mother rather than dead. In contrast, the false mother agreed with the boy's division, because completely selfishly, she wanted her true mother to lose her son too. When seeing the reactions of 2 women, Solomon had no doubt about which decision to make and returned his son to his true mother. Nothing is known about what happened to that imposing mother. We don't know if she later regretted her attitude or if she had other children again. We just know that, by a fatality, she didn't have the opportunity to raise her son. Her behavior makes us wonder what kind of mother she would have been for that boy. The second example in our list of the worst mothers in the Bible is the example of another anonymous woman who lived in healthy Mary. As recorded in the second book of Kings, chapter 6, between verses 24 and 30, the story of this woman occurred during the reign of King Joram of Israel, the son of Achabiah and Jezebel. During this period, the city of Samaria had been besieged by the king of Syria, and consequently, the city suffered a terrible hunger, and the inhabitants resorted to extreme measures to survive. And in this context, the Bible records that 2 women made a sinister agreement. They agreed that they would kill and eat the son of one of them, and the next day they would do the same with the other's son. Then the first mother killed and cooked her own son to feed on him. However, when it was time for the other mother to fulfill her part of the deal, she refused to kill her own son. Then the woman who had already killed her son felt wronged and resorted to King Joram in search of justice. Shocked by the situation, the king ripped his robes and blamed the prophet Elisha for the suffering of the people. The situation in Samaria was really disastrous. Even the crisis was so great that a donkey head, which was an undesirable part of an animal considered filthy by the Mosaic law, was marketed by a kilo of silver. Even so, that mother committed the unthinkable. In addition from that, even the other woman, who refused to fulfill the combined by delivering her son, also did not show to have a sense of mother, because before that she was part of that terrible agreement, and also fed the boy who was killed. And all that suffering was not because of the prophet Elisha, but it was the result of the sin of the Israelites who had broken the covenant with the Lord and had been deeply corrupted by idolatry since the times of Achabiah and Jezebel. And speaking of Jezebel, we now come to the third example of the worst mothers in the Bible. And oddly enough, it's not Jezebel, but his daughter, Athaliah. Undoubtedly, what Athaliah became a lot to do with the kind of influence her wicked mother exerted on her. That is, yes, Jezebel could also be included in this list, but it seems that Athaliah has led her mother's wickedness to an even higher level. When Athaliah married Joram, the son of King Jehoshaphat, she managed to take the idolatry of her parents to the kingdom of Judah. In addition, managed to make her husband kill her own brothers. Later, when his son Achazias became the only survivor of his house after the death of his father and brothers, he took the throne of Judah under the strong influence of his wicked mother, Athaliah. However, his reign was short-lived, because about a year later he was also killed. Athaliah then took advantage of the situation to usurp the throne of Jerusalem, and it was in this context that we can understand why she was such a negligible matriarch for her family. Have you heard someone say that grandmother is mother twice? Yeah, this was not the case with Athaliah. All his children were dead, and all that had been left of his family were his grandchildren. However, completely insane, Athaliah had her own grandchildren killed to exterminate David's lineage and perpetuate himself in power. But fortunately, one of his grandchildren, who was only 1 year old, escaped from that massacre when he was saved by his aunt and lived hidden in the temple for 6 years, until he was proclaimed king at the age of 7 in a revolt, led by the priesthood of Jerusalem against Athaliah. And in this revolt, the grandma, which no one would have to have, was dead. And in the face of all these atrocities, someone may question why the Bible records such stories. The truth is that the Bible does not hide the mistakes and failures of its characters, and thereby gives us the opportunity to recognize our dependence on God's grace in our lives. Distant to the Lord, people are able to make the most disturbing things as possible, even against those who should love and protect. These sad examples teach us how to value divine orientation, so as not to make tragic and immoral decisions that may bear the Lord's precepts and destroy our families. And you, do you agree that these women are among the worst mothers in the Bible? You would add some name to this list? Write in the comments.
What you just watched wasn't just a video, it was a presence exercise. If you stayed until now, it shows something in you is more awake. Comment on what stayed with you, what message hit you hardest, and share this with someone who also values this kind of conversation. Thanks, a big hug, and see you in the next video.